Good morning. So this is my newest tractor acquisition here. It's a 1944 John Deere Styled AW. Tractor was frozen when I got it, and I freed up the engine, had to put some new tires on it, got it running, runs great. Unfortunately, there's a couple seals that are going to have to be replaced. One is the valve cover gasket, leaks a little bit of oil through there, as well as the seal for the flywheel that keeps the engine oil inside the engine. So of course when it's running, it streaks oil everywhere and makes a mess. So today we're going to replace the seal for the flywheel. Fairly simple process, not a whole lot of videos or information about how to do it. I've never done one, but I've done the research, so I think I can go ahead and do it. So to begin, a few things you want to notice. First thing is in the center of the shaft here, you want to make sure that when you pull off the flywheel, you want to make sure that it's got a mark, and this one actually has a mark right there. You want to make sure it goes on the same spline. You don't want to get it off at all because that'll mess up your timing and have to play with the governor and all that. So that's key number one. And then to simply remove this, come over here. If you look down in here, there's actually a bolt on this side as well as one on the other side that goes the opposite way. So you just loosen up those nuts. This one happens to be 1.25 inches. I tried getting a wrench in there, but because it's so tight, there's just not enough room to get some leverage on the wrench. So what I found is I actually used the 3/4 drive impact gun with a swivel, an extension, the socket, and was able to bust them free right away. So I'm gonna go ahead and get ready. I've got those loose, and we will see how we get this thing supported and ready to take off. Okay, so while I was away, I went and got some tools out. Now this flywheel weighs about 250 pounds, so it's just a little too heavy for one person to try to manage, do by themselves. So I happened to pick this up a couple years ago. There's a simple little hoist, a cherry picker, and so I'm going to use that for this task today. And simply all I did was I hooked it up, used a strap. I'm sure there's many things you can use. I just happen to have this, so I just have it linked right through the flywheel hole on up to the hook there. And then what I have, and this is the most important thing, is I have just a puller, and I've got it going to use the holes and then put it on the center of the shaft. Now there are some bolt holes in here, and I did buy some bolts because there are certain pullers that have a little wedge that you can run a bolt through and pull things that way. But I think this one will work just like this. Okay, so as you can see here, I got the crescent wrench on there, and as I move this around, the flywheel is actually coming right on off. This is super easy. I was expecting it to be really hard, but yeah, as you see, we're making ground there. So right on out. Now I don't have a whole lot of tension on this. In fact, I don't have any tension. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a little more tension on that. And that just supports it. That's all we're looking to do, is so that it doesn't fall on the ground. And let's go ahead and whip this around a little bit more. Simple crescent wrench. Now on most of these pullers, you can tap on it, and that definitely adds force. It's the same thing as like an impact gun. So, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the video and go ahead and pull this off. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the flywheel off, slid right on off of there, got it supported in the air by my lift. I'm gonna go ahead and move that out of the way, and then the goal is right here, we're gonna be getting into that and replacing the seal. So let me go and get that set up. Okay, so what I've done here is I cleaned up the shaft just a little bit, got the loose oil and stuff off of it, make it easier to work with. And then there are 5 bolts that need to come out all the way around here. And I've got one left, so I'll go ahead and pull that one out. And a good rule of thumb is when you do this, kind of lay them out as to where they were at. And then this is gonna come right out. I was thinking I was gonna have to pry it. May still need to go ahead and get a knife in there. Figure out what side the gasket's coming out on. And try not to do it with that gasket may need to be replaced. Just kind of work it out. Okay, so as you can see, I'm just working it out all the way around, and she's coming out beautifully. So I'm gonna go ahead and set down the camera and get that off. Okay, so I wanted to note a couple things before I got much further. First thing is on the shaft here, there's a little tip, okay, and that's to help line up the flywheel so that you can't get the timing wrong. And in order to take this piece off, on here is a little thing, so we'll make sure we line that up as it comes off. Now I've gotten this one off this far. It should have slid all the way out, but as I would suspect is these are probably rough. So I went ahead and grabbed some sandpaper and did sand those down just a little bit to make it smooth. Still having some issues. I'm gonna try putting the puller on it and pull it straight out. I think that'll help. I mean, I can almost get it free with the bar, but we'll go ahead and do that. And then in the process of this, the gasket did fall apart. It was very brittle. So I'm probably gonna run to the house and build a new gasket for it as well. Okay, so now I've actually got the part off. Here's the cover. So I used the puller to go ahead and pull it off. Got it at a certain point, and then right here, it just fell off. So what I'm thinking is, I believe that seal goes right here, and then it presses against the chassis. So I gotta go do a little research. But I know I am gonna have to build a gasket. This gasket just fell right off. It's just so brittle. So we'll go ahead and build a new gasket for that and get things cleaned up and start putting things back together. Not too bad. Alright guys, I've made it back to the house here, and I am ready to start processing making a gasket for this part here. First thing I gotta do though is clean it up real good. So the way I do that is I just have this metal parts bin I pick up at the local hardware store. And then I use this particular product to clean up my parts. And the only reason I use it is because I do have a parts washer. Don't have it here with me, but this material works really well. So just pour a little bit in and then kind of swirl it around. I'll use this brush to apply it and just clean it up real good and dry it off. And then we'll be ready to start laying out gasket, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, I finished cleaning up the part. Now, if this tractor were going to be restored, I would probably go ahead and clean this up really good and probably paint it, just because once it's back there, it's really hard to paint behind the flywheel. But because I like the patina of this tractor and I had no plans of painting it, I'm just going to get it running and functioning. I decided to go ahead and just clean up the part and leave the paint the way it is. So it'll be fine for another 76 years. So what I've done here is this is just gasket material I picked up from the hardware store, and I found out the best way to keep it flat, because you want it flat when you're working with it, is to find some way to lay it flat on the bench and hold it down. So I just got a board here clamping it down, and one here, and I'm going to use my material up here. Now when you're doing this, you want to place them so you can get the most bang for your buck on the material. So I just usually start in one corner, and obviously I'll have a little bit of stuff that I'll lose, but that'll work. So kind of the tools to do this. So let's talk about this. So first thing I got, oh, there's my camera. Okay, so what I have here is I have a punch set that I picked up off the internet, real cheap on Amazon, and that's just going to cut my holes for the bolts. Have a material, so when we go to punch, we'll want to set the material on there and punch it. Gives a good cut. Use just a typical marker for marking holes primarily, and then this is my most favorite, is to trace the outline just like that. Use just a regular box cutting knife to cut it, and that's it. And of course use that to hammer it down. So I'm gonna go ahead and trace this thing out and start cutting. Okay, so I have gone ahead and used my pencil and just kind of do this. So what I've done is I've traced around the outside edge nice and hard, so I got a good line. And then once I did the outside edge, I also went right into the holes there and kind of went around. And I was able to do that on all these holes. Now I was hoping to use this marker. I like using marker, it's just a lot easier to see, and I'd be able to do that on those, but those ones not. So one trick for that is you can use paintbrush. You can get a little bit of paint down in there and work the brush up and down the hole, and obviously that'll give you a good dot. You can use aerosol paint, but for me, I've gone ahead and just you know, wiggled it around like that and got some graphite down there on the paper. So I should be able to see my holes and be able to go ahead and cut some holes here with it. Shouldn't be any issue with that. So I'm going to go ahead now and cut this out, and then we'll talk about the inside, because obviously you'll have the inside of the gasket that we'll have to worry about. And how do we do that, man? Because there's no way, I mean, this isn't what I want. I need it to be like a ½ an inch or so in from the outside here. So we'll talk about how to do that. Okay, so I've gone ahead and cut out the outside edge of this gasket. And if you note, like right there, let's see, there's a hole that we marked. Another one there. So we just kind of go around, and some of them came through, some didn't come through very well. So what I like to do is the ones that I did notify, we'll go ahead and just kind of bloop and bloop, 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 and bloop. That'll help us a little bit more as we progress on. So let's talk about the edge. If we look at this piece of material here, you notice how it's got this edge right here. So how do we transfer that to there? So there is an easy way to do that. Let me grab the tool and I'll show you how. Okay, so as you can see, what I've done is I've gone ahead and traced out the inside, marking it out, and just for kicks I've added a black line here so you can see a little bit better. So what that is the inside of the gasket, and this one wasn't too bad to do. So what I'm going to do now is use my knife and I'm going to cut in. Now, if you notice, there's nothing on the inside that's obtruding it, so if it's a little bit bigger on the inside, that's going to be okay. Obviously, a little bit of crud will build up underneath it and could potentially seep underneath it, but we're going to use a little sealant anyways, so I'm not too worried about that. So on the line of being cautious, I'm going to cut on the black line on the inside of the material, giving it a little bit of a lip. So I'll go ahead and get this cut out, and then the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and punch the holes out. So we'll get on it. All right, got that all cut it out, and it came out pretty good. I mean, best we can do. Biggest thing is when you're working with the blade, you don't want to put too much pressure on it, and you don't want to go too quick because you can scar where your gasket real quick. So just take it slow and easy, and you should be able to cut it out nice. So next thing we're going to do is put the holes in it, just like that. And for this, I'm using the 3/8 hole getter. And the way you can measure this is you can always come up here, and then when you grab your tip, you can just kind of line it up and see how well it works. You know, and this is the main idea, is get the bulk of the gasket. Sometimes the bolts will be off just a little bit, but they will push through. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lay this flat. I'm going to line up the getter, and then using a hammer, I'm going to smack the end of it and kind of lift up and see if it's come off. And you just want to do that till you can get it out. No real techniques to this, just go at it. Okay, I've put the holes in it, and now the easiest thing to do is kind of lay it on the part that you're able to and just check and see. And like I said, they don't have to be perfect, they will come back out. The biggest thing is just making sure that gasket material wise you got plenty all the way around and that it will seal. So I'm happy with that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and head back over to my parents' place where the tractors is at, and I'm going to go ahead and get that seal replaced. We'll get this gasket put on. So we'll continue on over there. All right, I have made it back over to Mom's place here, and just to catch up, we are replacing the seal for the flywheel here. The seal actually goes right here, and I went home and did a little research because I thought it went on this side, but being here, this part's got to come off. So to do that, there's a set screw right here that's going to have to come out, otherwise it doesn't clear. So I got to take that out, slide this out, so that way we can put the seal in and put that back on and start putting it back together. We had gone home and built a new gasket for here, so I'm gonna clean this up. We'll get the gasket on and get that flange back on there and everything. So let me show you what we're doing here. So this is actually the seal. It's just a little, oh no, it just broke, a velvet seal. Doggone it. Well, that's no good. I don't know if I can fix it. I'm gonna try to fix it, but I'm probably gonna have to order another one. It's a cork seal. So, and I actually ordered this one off of eBay. However, my favorite parts house happens to be Steiner. New parts for old tractors. Great place. I've ordered stuff for them for years. And they just have tons and tons and tons of parts. So, recommend if you're looking for parts, look them up on the internet and order what you need. So, here's our part that we're going in. And I'm going to try to fix that. So, we'll see what we can do to do that. Okay, so as you can see, I was able to fix this part. I simply pulled out the hot glue gun because what this is just a cork gasket, or piece of cork with graphite on the outside. So I was able to hot glue the cork back together, and the graphite kind of seals it, and that's how that works. So got that together, and I'm letting that dry. While I'm doing that, I'm working on getting this bolt out. So this little piece right here has to come out. And I tried just a regular screwdriver already, and it's in there pretty tight. So I'm gonna have to use my impact driver. And I'll just put that on there and hammer it, and it should back right on out. Okay, so let's talk about this bolt right here. So I tried taking it out, and first whack, it snapped half the head off. And I suspect that that bolt probably was cracked and stuff. Shouldn't have done that. It should have threaded out of there, but it didn't. So not a big deal. I went ahead and just used a file and got it nice and even, so that I was able to slide that part off. And so once I did that, it's good. So technically right now I could probably go ahead and drill a hole in that and remove that, rethread it, and call it good. I'm not going to do that at this time. I'm going to go ahead and put this thing back together. So right along the edge here is where our seal is going to sit, and that's what keeps the oil in right there, because obviously it'll leak out right through here and stuff, and that's how that works. So I'm going to go ahead, run over here and show you how the seal works. So this is the part we took off. Okay, I'll set here in my parts bin. And right here is the old seal. And I can see that there's no lip on it, so it definitely was not sealing. So it's free sitting in there. I can take that off and go ahead and put this one on. I think what I'm gonna do though is I'm gonna put this on the shaft before putting it in here, just because I know it is really brittle and I'll be afraid that it'll break before I put it in there. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do that. Looks like it sits down in there. Oh, look at that one broke too. So that's our process. Ooh, that's good. All right, so we'll get that cleaned up and seal in and stuff. Okay, so my next step is actually, I went ahead and grabbed some sandpaper and sanded down the shaft, because obviously the smoother the shaft is, the better that seal is going to be to put on. So I got that pretty good. I'm actually going to clean up these, and I'll show you how I do that. So I was at Harbor Freight the other day, and they happen to have this nice little wire brush set. So I'm going to actually crack into that. I bought this for doing carburetors, but I think like these ones here will be real good to get down in those grooves. So I'm just going to clean up the loose debris. I don't need to get too crazy. Flywheel came off good. If the flywheel is stuck more, I'd probably go ahead and clear up the spines a lot better. So, and I did go ahead and get that new seal in there. Went in pretty good. I was real careful not to break it this time again. So I got her in there, and this is ready to slide back on the shaft. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean that up, and then we'll be getting somewhere. Okay, so I've gone ahead and cleaned up the shaft real good and used my wire brush and cleaned up the grooves real good. I went ahead and grabbed some sandpaper and just ran sandpaper across the edge there. So we're getting ready to put the gasket on. So the gasket that we made, what you do is you put it on there and you figure out which way goes best. And I found that it goes like, I believe like that. Yeah, with the edges on there. So I'm gonna put it on just like that. And then to apply it, I'm actually going to use, there's a couple different things. There's gasket maker, which if you didn't do gaskets, you can just put that down. But I'm going to use gasket sealant, because this holds the gaskets in place until it's pressed together. So that's what I'm going to use. That's the best thing to do. I could just put it in there, but being I'm going to already be fighting a seal and stuff, I don't want to move it around while I put that nice piece back in there. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so let me go and catch us up here. So I went ahead and got this gasket on. So I just put that stuff on there, kind of used my finger and just kind of varnished it in. Then I was able to stick the gasket to it, and the gasket's there. Okay, next thing is going ahead and putting this piece on. Now what I found is, obviously because it's a seal, it was really tight on here. So I kind of worked it up and over, and I had to get just a little, this is just a little flat thing, and so I'd get it up in here and kind of just work it up on, and I was able to get it on there without too much trouble. Looks like it was still intact pretty good. So now I'm just using my good old rubber mallet and a block. I'll use the block and wedge it right up against here and just give it some good smacks, and the goal is to get it all the way up and against the frame there. So that's what I'm doing. Okay, so as you can see, we're making headway here. So simply, once I got the seal on, I was able to slide the cover right on. Everything's looking really good there. I went ahead and put the bolts back in. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten them down now, and I'll rub my finger and getting that looking pretty. And then we'll be pretty close to getting the flywheel back on. Okay, so I've gone ahead and got the flywheel back up in the air. I cleaned up the splines a little bit. I said they weren't in bad shape. One thing I do want to note that little bolt I broke off, if you notice right here, this spline is a little bit deeper. So if you ever did have issues trying to line back up the flywheel where it was at, it's gonna go right there, so you can line that up. So you really don't need that other mark I showed at the beginning of this tutorial. But it's a good idea to have. So I'm gonna go ahead and line this up and get it started, and we'll start the next footage. Okay, as I was joining this back together, I noticed something that I needed to go ahead and point out here. So on the back side of the flywheel, I noticed that there's this little tip here. And I'm like, okay, what can that go to? So as I recalled, there's this little ring here. So that tip actually goes in this one here. However, when you put this back on, it's right here. This is the tip that breaches this. So I had to spin that all the way around the shaft to about right there. And as I seat the flywheel back in, I'm probably gonna have to move that just a little bit so that way the flywheel actually rubs in there. And that's how it works to keep it sealed in there. Okay, so as you can see, I got the flywheel back on. Took a little bit. Once again, that one deal that needed to be lined up right down in there. You definitely want to try to have that lined up before you put the flywheel on. I had to get in there with a couple tools and get her beat around right to spot. It'd be a lot easier to do without the flywheel on. Just take note as to which groove it needs to go in, and it should line right on up. So to beat on the plywood, I simply used a block and a hammer. Got it on there as far as it would go. Then went ahead and tightened back down those 1.5 or 1.25 bolts. And the flywheel is back on and ready. Give it a quick spray down, got rid of as much oil as I can. Eventually I'm going to go ahead and pressure wash this tractor and get rid of all the grime, but it is back together now. So that completes that project. Next I need to go ahead and tackle replacing the valve cover gasket, and I'll probably do that in a separate video.